What does it look like when the most dangerous player in baseball stops warming up and starts manufacturing? Not hitting. Not performing. Manufacturing. There is a difference. A hitter performs when the moment calls for it. But a manufacturer? A manufacturer produces regardless of the moment, regardless of the opponent, regardless of the pressure. The factory doesn't care what day it is. The machine doesn't ask whether conditions are favorable. It simply runs, and it runs at full capacity. That is what the Toronto Blue Jays witnessed over 2 consecutive games. That is what their dugout was left processing after back-to-back nights of watching Shohei Ohtani do something that most players in baseball history have never done with such unsettling consistency. And when the dust settled, when the ball had cleared the fence for the second time in 2 nights, one phrase quietly spread through the baseball world like smoke under a closed door. He's entered mass production mode. Those words didn't come from a fan account. They didn't come from a highlight reel narrator. They came from people who watch baseball for a living, people who have seen sluggers, phenoms, generational talents, and even they had no better way to describe what Ohtani is currently doing than to compare him to a factory that has finally switched on all of its machines at once. But that's only half the story. Because while Ohtani's bat was sending shockwaves through Toronto, his manager was quietly dropping information that sent an entirely different kind of shockwave through the baseball world. When asked about Ohtani's condition and his next pitching appearance, the answer was not what anyone expected. It was honest. It was careful. And it sparked a discussion that is still running right now. So today, we are going to go inside both stories. The home runs. The reaction from Toronto. The manager's words. And what all of it tells us about where Shohei Ohtani actually is, not just as a hitter, not just as a pitcher, but as a complete force of nature who may be entering the most dangerous phase of his career yet. To understand why the Blue Jays' reaction carried so much weight, you first need to understand what it feels like to face Ohtani when he is locked in. It is not like facing a hot hitter. Hot hitters get lucky. Hot hitters ride a wave of good timing and favorable counts and pitches that catch too much of the plate. What Ohtani does is something structurally different. When he is in this mode, this manufacturing mode, he is not waiting for a mistake. He is creating the conditions for damage on his own terms. Game 1 against Toronto, Ohtani stepped into the box in a moment where the game needed something. The at-bat was not soft. The pitcher was not careless. The count was not a gift. And yet, the result was inevitable in the way that only Ohtani results can feel inevitable. A swing that seemed almost casual in its violence, a ball that left the bat at a speed that made everyone in the stadium instinctively look up before they had even consciously registered what had happened. Gone. The dugout reaction from the Blue Jays told the real story. Not panic. Not frustration. Something quieter and more unsettling than either of those things. The look of people who had prepared, who had a plan, who had executed that plan reasonably well, and still watched the ball disappear over the fence anyway. One night later, Ohtani came back. Same ballpark. Same opponent. Different at-bat, different count, different situation. Same result. The ball left the bat. The outfielder tracked it. And then the outfielder stopped tracking it, because there was nothing left to track. 2 games. 2 home runs. Back-to-back nights of Shohei Ohtani reminding the Blue Jays, and everyone watching, that what they are dealing with is not a hot streak. This is a standard. When the phrase, mass production mode, started circulating after those 2 games, some people laughed. Some people nodded. But very few people stopped to ask what it actually means, and why it is the most accurate description anyone has found for what Ohtani does at his peak. Mass production is not about one extraordinary moment. Any player can have one extraordinary moment. Mass production is about system. It is about a repeatable process that delivers consistent output regardless of the inputs it receives. Think about what that means applied to a baseball player. Most hitters are reactive. They respond to what pitchers give them. They look for certain pitches, in certain zones, at certain counts, and when they get them, they do damage. Their production is directly tied to the quality of information they receive from the opposing battery. Ohtani, when he enters this mode, reverses that equation. He is not waiting for a favorable pitch. He has studied the data so deeply, prepared his swing mechanics so thoroughly, and managed his body so precisely that he arrives at the plate with a production system already running. The pitcher is not in control of the outcome the way they normally are. The pitcher is simply a variable that Ohtani's system accounts for and processes. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is what the numbers show. And this is what the Blue Jays were experiencing in real time over those 2 consecutive nights, the feeling of feeding inputs into a machine and watching the machine produce the same output anyway. 2 games. 2 home runs. The factory was running. What makes the Blue Jays' reaction so significant is not the surprise. Surprise at Ohtani doing something remarkable is no longer a reasonable response from a major league organization. They knew he was dangerous. They prepared for him to be dangerous. What is significant is the specific language that came out of the Toronto camp after those 2 games. When opposing players and coaches speak about Ohtani in this stretch, the words they reach for are not the words you use for a player who is hot. They are not saying he got lucky. They are not pointing to poor execution on their end as the primary explanation. The language they are using is the language you use when you have encountered something that exists outside the normal framework of preparation. Mass production mode. That phrase carries within it an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that what they are watching is not random. That it is not circumstantial. That there is a system operating behind every at-bat, every swing, every result, and that the system is currently running without errors. One Blue Jays observer noted that even the swings that did not result in home runs looked dangerous. That the contact on off-speed pitches was being made at a part of the bat and a point in the zone that most hitters simply cannot reach with consistency. That the 2 home runs were not outliers within the series, they were the most visible expressions of something that was present in every single at-bat. When a team that faced you back-to-back comes away not talking about what went wrong, but about what you are becoming, that is when you know something has shifted. And then came the pitching question. With Ohtani's bat producing at this level, the natural next conversation is always the mound. When is he pitching again? What does his arm feel like? Is the 2-way machine fully operational? When Ohtani's manager was asked directly about his condition and his next pitching appearance, the answer was not the standard media-trained deflection. It was not, "He's doing great, we'll see." It was something more considered. More honest. And because of that honesty, more significant. The manager revealed that Ohtani's pitching condition is being monitored with extreme care. That the decision about when he next takes the mound is not being made based on schedule or rotation convenience. It is being made based on a precise read of where his body is, specifically his arm, and that the evaluation process is ongoing. What made this answer spark discussion across the baseball world was not what was said, but what was implied. The implication was clear: the Dodgers are not rushing this. They are not going to put Ohtani on the mound before his arm is exactly where it needs to be, regardless of how spectacular his hitting is, regardless of public anticipation, regardless of anything external. For fans who have been waiting for the full 2-way Ohtani experience to return, this answer was both reassuring and sobering. Reassuring because it confirmed the organization is treating his recovery with the seriousness it deserves. Sobering because it made clear that the pitching return is not imminent simply because the hitting is extraordinary. The body operates on its own timeline. And Ohtani's team understands that better than anyone. Here is what is easy to miss when you are focused on the home runs and the headlines. Ohtani hitting back-to-back home runs against the Blue Jays is remarkable. But it is remarkable in the way that a highly engineered machine performing exactly as designed is remarkable. The real story is not the output. The real story is the system that produces the output. Every swing Ohtani takes in a game is the visible end of a process that began hours, sometimes days, before. The study of opposing pitchers' tendencies. The precise calibration of his physical preparation on a given day. The dietary decisions that determine what his muscles have access to in the sixth inning of a close game. The mental routine that ensures he arrives at the plate not hoping, but knowing. This is the part that the Blue Jays couldn't prepare against. You can prepare against a swing. You cannot prepare against a system. And this is also the part that makes the manager's comments about his pitching so layered. Because the same system that is producing home runs every night is also managing the recovery of an arm that the entire baseball world is waiting to see on the mound again. The same precision that governs his diet and his hitting preparation also governs the decisions being made about when his arm is ready. Ohtani is not being careless with his body to impress anyone. He is operating on a timeline that only he and his medical team fully understand. And based on what his bat is doing right now, that timeline appears to be producing exactly what it is designed to produce. The Blue Jays will move on. They will face other opponents, prepare for other challenges, and the sting of 2 consecutive nights watching Ohtani's home runs clear the fence will fade into the background of a long season. But the phrase will stay. He's entered mass production mode. Because what those 2 games in Toronto revealed is not that Ohtani had 2 good nights. What they revealed is that the system is running. That the preparation, the discipline, the physical management, the mental routine, all of it has aligned into something that is no longer producing highlights occasionally. It is producing them on schedule. And somewhere in a medical room with his team, Ohtani is also managing the return of the other half of his game, the mound, the arm, the pitch that makes him not just the best hitter in baseball but potentially the most complete player the sport has ever seen. The manager was honest. The timeline is careful. The process is ongoing. The factory hasn't even reached full capacity yet. And that might be the most frightening thing the Blue Jays, or anyone in baseball, has heard all season.